So this morning, gentlemen, I want to talk to you about how do you know if you're addicted or not? And that screening test that I gave you with the 25 questions, it is a wonderfully verified sexual addiction screening test. And those of you who are able to receive it because you weren't on a phone, you're able to score yourself out of 25. The more yeses you say to that test, the deeper the nature of your sexual addiction. And if you look at the scorecard on page 2, you notice that the real change point is around 13. That if you've had 13 or more yeses, you can't dodge the fact that you're battling some version of sexual addiction. And of course, it doesn't mean that if you're less than 13 that you don't have issues, because the percentages are still high that you're a bona fide, person struggling with sexual addiction. But we think in our minds, well, I'm not some kind of weird sex addict. Okay, fine. But it depends how you measure it. And this is the credibility measurement that we can use to determine the nature of our addiction. And there's a lot of other things that go beyond this, but this will actually verify with a high level of credibility the nature and level of your sexual addiction. And so that's something that you need to think about. And yeah, I mean, I would be curious to have you text me sometime and just say, Currie, I scored 16 or I scored 11 or whatever out of the 25, just for my understanding and growth, especially if you guys are working with me and I'm counseling you. It would be good for you because I could have you do that in my office too and just get a number. But it's more for you to understand that your life is unmanageable. You really are not controlling this. And even though you look at others, this is the crazy thing. I've been doing this long enough that guys say, well, I'm not like that guy, or I've never done that. And so that I'm not like the rest of these guys. Meantime, if we did a test like this, or if I talk to them privately, there'd be no doubt that there's issues going on here. And so yeah, I commend you to that. And now I want to put something else up there, and I apologize for those guys who are on a phone, because you're going to have to listen and get it later. The answering the question, are you addicted or not, is the notes that are there. And some of you say, well, Currie, what's the point? I know that, but it's just a reinforcement that if it looks like fire and smells like fire and whatever, then it likely is fire. You can't duck that. And I'm in my early workings with this document, but the question I would have, and of course, those of you guys that are regular here, this is going to be elementary because you're here, you're committed, you're growing, you're part of the Grit and Grace team, and I'm really, really proud of you for that. For some of you who maybe have joined us more recently and you're wondering, do I really need to be in this group? This is a good check for you, okay? And so I asked the question, are you kidding yourself? How to know if you're addicted or not. And so these are my initial thoughts about some key elements of sexual addiction. And that screening test will be a starting point. And one of you guys has texted me already, and there's a 16, so he knows for sure he's got an addictive pattern going on that needs to be addressed. Okay, so let's walk through this. Porn has been around a long time, and the PMO, porn, masturbation, orgasm cycle, is pretty deeply entrenched. Some of you are aware, of course, Dr. Doug Weiss, who I think is #1 in the world of helping people through sexual addiction. I've got all my training through Doug, and been in his office numerous times. But the last time I was there, I was in Doug's office for 9 hours a day as he was counseling 3 different couples through sexual addiction intensives. And the one guy's pattern was interesting. And he would, nothing, no problem, nothing, but about every 12 to 14 months, he would crash, relapse, and go to some kind of massage parlor, with a happy ending, and do that for a couple of days, then hate himself and go, what have I done? And then he, but it wasn't like he was falling back every 3 weeks, right? This is a high-end business executive that, is a respectable man in the community, yada, yada, yada. And, but Doug says, just because it's 14 months between this and the last time, look at your pattern. You last about a year, then you crash and you go through this, and your wife is so done, and we're done. This is, here we go again. And, there's other guys that struggle with porn and might relapse 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I'm not going to do this ever again and all that. But the whole porn thing's been around a long time, and there is a pattern that's pretty strong. Number two, there is this huge, extreme need for privacy. Secrets are the norm. You don't disclose stuff. You hide stuff. You're keeping your phone private. You might even change your password on your phone. You got private accounts. You got new email addresses because you're hiding it from your spouse and others. You sometimes even have some kind of unique handle that doesn't identify. It's not Dave Currie at gmail.com. It's Hollywood@gmail.com, and so, you're doing all that you can to keep it secret and private. That's part of the addictive pattern, because there's part of your life you just don't want people to be aware of. You don't want to be ashamed by them knowing this. So you just keep secrets. And I said this to one of you this week privately, but I want you to know something. There is power. There is power over you in keeping secrets. Power grows in secret. The enemy's power grows over you as you try to keep things private and you play secret games. And so there's another, what I call part of the addictive pattern. Thirdly, I've experienced this over and over in my work with people struggling with porn or sexual addiction, that they're just as addicted to lying as they are to the porn. Like seriously, it's constant lies to cover their tracks or activities. Lying is clearly a part of the addiction. And for many of the spouses, they're hurt as much by you lying to them. They look you in the face and say, are you this or that? And you go, oh, honey, no, I would never do that. And no, I've got it covered. You're good. Don't worry about that. I love you. And the whole thing has been a crock of BS, because you're lying to them even when they look at you straight. It's a bold face, straight in the face lie, and you've done that numerous times. And then you keep track. Well, I said that, so I got to remember to lie to cover that lie, and the whole pattern of lying is thirdly, justification and minimization of the effects of porn and sexual fantasy is having on you and others. Listen, I got this. It's not really bothering me that much. And, I think my wife would understand, that all men have kind of this problem a little bit. And matter of fact, part of the minimization is people lie to themselves. The pattern is not just lying to other people, but they lie to themselves. They convince themselves that, this isn't that bad, others are worse, and, that kind of goofiness, but justified minimize. Matter of fact, when their spouse gets close to asking them or starts asking them, there's sometimes even angry reaction and defensiveness and says, oh, come on, what do you think I am? I'm not, golly, honey. I would, all this extreme opposite of reality, because they justify, minimize, or get defensive when someone gets close to the truth. And so I see that going on. Number 5, usually, almost without exception, there's a gradual deepening in the addiction. Maybe you'll understand it clearer when we talk about tolerance in drug addiction. So when I, take a certain drug or chemical to get this level of high, but pretty soon after a while, I develop a tolerance to that. So I need to take more of that drug to get that same level of buzz. You understand? Tolerance, right? And so what happens, I keep either adding new drugs or more of the same drug or mixing drugs together to try to get and sustain a certain level of high. Well, what happens is because so much is available, and with porn now online, it's anonymous, it's so available, obviously it's affordable, and it's so accessible that what happens is, um, and at a click of a finger, a push of a button, you can get to more edgier stuff and more raw stuff and more raunchy stuff and more variety. And you go, golly, I never would have thought 6 months ago I'd be looking at this. But you're looking at stuff that is getting more complex, more degrading, and not that the first junk is okay ever, but you see an increasing, a greater draw. And that's where even when people, start doing anything live, like they might go to a strip club or they might go to a massage parlor, and maybe they don't have the happy ending, but they're just, it's a real sexual experience, and they're fantasizing. They go to their car afterwards and they masturbate, or guys do all kinds of things to just kind of get that thrill experience, because it's all part of the wearing down of what the thrill is. So I need to keep upping the game to keep the addiction fed. And so so that's number 5. And number 6, deterioration of personal values and boundaries has begun, or is really clear. If I had a dollar for every time a guy in my office said, I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you about this, that this is what I've done. I can't believe that. Why? Because their boundaries deteriorated, and all of a sudden they stop and look back and they go, oh my goodness, how did I get here? What am I doing? What am I thinking? But the erosion of values is really slow, through the lying to self, the minimization, justification, through letting the addiction continue to get a hold of us and pull us into it. What happens is the erosion of our boundaries and values just continues to grow. And we listen to things that coworkers are saying, and we laugh about stuff that, and we say, I guess this is norm, this is what everybody's talking about. And so we kind of go with it, and because our culture is there. And but that was never your personal boundaries. That was never okay for you in the past. And so you've seen a deterioration of your values and your boundaries, and you find yourself thinking things and saying things and doing things and laughing at things and looking at things and even participating in things that you never would have done 6 months or a year ago. And so the addiction continues to cause that erosion. Almost without exception, number 7, personal faith and relationship with God completely goes to the tank. like serious, it's faltered or faded, or you know in your heart you're a walking hypocrite. Now, that doesn't mean that on your journey, that if you struggle and relapse and you seek the Lord, and you want to keep going with him and listen to him and follow him, that doesn't mean that in your recovery experience, you're not reconnecting to the Lord and listening to him and repenting. That's part of the journey. No problem. But when you continue in your addiction and you allow more things to take hold of you, and more time is spent, and the deepening of the problem, and acting out in new ways, or just continuing the same level of things, what happens is, almost without exception, there's a growing distance from God. I don't feel at peace with him. I feel ashamed. It's like, God's going to quit loving me. I've blown it too much. He's given up on me. I don't feel at peace at all in his presence. Well, no wonder why. But over and over again, there's a distancing from God as the addiction continues to get a greater grip on you. And that's why I believe many men pull back from being involved in leadership or leading a Bible study, different things, because they feel so embarrassed by this private life that they're not wanting to deal with. And so number 7 is a critical element. Number 8, the addiction the hold, it pushes you to continue and not counting the cost. Um, there's relationships you're going to jeopardize. Um, I mean, I worked with men who've lost their job because they looked at porn at work. Um, people have blown up their families. I mean, some of you men here know what that's all about. That the addiction has just really destroyed what's really important to you, but they're no longer able to count the costs. They no longer can separate their own fantasy world or their own secret world, weigh it against the reality of wife, kids, family, relationships, the impact on extended family, and those kind of things. Matter of fact, some years ago, a father and son flew in from another province for me to help the son with the addiction, and the dad was leading a small group of teenagers. He was helping them recover. When I talked to the dad privately, he was more addicted to porn than the boy he was helping. And I made him come clean with his son that he was a crock of baloney, as it were, because he was leading the group and helping these young guys get over their problem. Meantime, dad was acting outside the marriage consistently. And so he wasn't counting the costs. He was living this sham, and it cost him his marriage, and it cost him for a good season respect with his son, and of course, in some cases, because the addiction is so strong, this gentleman blamed me for helping him see that his addiction was worse than his son, and said that I didn't help him, and you were there to help my son, you shouldn't have been asking me the questions and all this. And he complained so much that I sent him his money back. I says, fine, that's okay, I don't need your money, but I'll tell you what, I'm a brother who held up the mirror for you to see, and you'll never see your boy free if you don't get yourself free too. So a little bit of grit and grace. But what happens is when the addiction continues to take hold, you're jeopardizing your primary relationships, and you no longer count the cost. And then when all of a sudden it comes out and you realize, oh my goodness, I could lose everything that's important to me, that's a sign that the addiction has got hold of you. Number 9, attempts to quit. Listen, guys, they're well-meaning. Listen, I'm not going to do this again. I'm not going to go here again. I'm not going to look at this again. And they're well-meaning, but they're short-lived. Because without a very deliberate attempt to work on the addiction, to establish purity, to be accountable, to do a program, you have a history of many attempts to quit, to stop, but the cycle continues. And it might be like the one guy I was with, Doug Weiss, in his office. It was a 12 to 14-month cycle. But you look back and, like one guy said to me, I'm almost 90 days clean. I don't ever remember in my life being 90 days clean. Well, because the addiction continued to pull him back. He tried to stop many times, and well-intentioned, I'm going to stop and not do this again, but not making any changes, not working on what you need to work on and deal with your own vices and insecurities and everything. It doesn't bring you freedom. You just, might have a little longer period before the next relapse, but you haven't worked on enough to really change things. Number 10, repeated feelings of guilt and shame, often leading to despair and discouragement. And what's the point? I'll never get out of this. And it's just really a downward emotional cycle because of the repeated relapses. And so there's a lot of just despondency, a lot of discouragement, emotionally just being down. So then what the heck, I'm also just keep going because I'm just a piece of garbage anyway. And that kind of emotional thing goes on. True for some of you, but not for all of you. But number 11 is acting outside the marriage with others is either on the horizon or has already taken place. And you say, well, what do you mean, Currie? Well, that is either meeting people in person or going live with somebody through chatting or sending texts back and forth, online chat rooms, watching live porn, but where you're actually interacting, texting back and forth, talking dirty, any kind of interaction with a real person, whether you're in their presence or online with them, there's acting going on outside the marriage. And that doesn't have to be there for everybody. But I'll tell you what, when that is starting to happen, and it might be that you have zero boundaries and you're scoping Betty Boob at the restaurant, and it's complete freelance. You scope, you look at butt, you look at chest. She comes to serve your food. You're looking down the cleavage line. I mean, you're just completely inundated with even real people opportunities to feed your addiction. And so in that case, you are acting outside the marriage because there's real people that you are scoping and looking at, be they people you work with, people in a mall, people on a beach, whatever, people on Facebook that you're creeping and stuff like that. And the last thing is, until guys really get over this, this denial. I'm not that. I'm not like that. And no one likes to hear, I've had people quit groups like this because, well, listen, I'm just not a sex addict. I've struggled with porn a little bit, but I'm not a sex addict. So if you can't quit based on this discussion and you're looking at porn, that's a sexual focus. If you're doing any kind of masturbation, that's sexual. If you're interacting with people about sexual activities or talking openly about sex with somebody, that's sexual. And if you can't stop, that's an addiction. So that's a sexual addiction. And if you say, well, I'm not a sex addict like some TV show where a guy is, some kind of pedophile or whatever, okay, call it what you like. But yeah. And so when you compare yourself to others and say, well, I'm not as bad as him, he's a real sex addict, and you justify the fact that you're addicted to something sexual, be it online or in person, the denial is part of the journey for many guys until they get over that. They're still fooling themselves, lying to themselves, and they do have an addiction. So between the test, the sexual addiction screening test, and the discussion here that I just gave you, which I just put together today based on all my experience with working with many people that struggle with this. I just want us to have a discussion now. So I'm gonna pause the video or stop the video of my talk, and then we're gonna jump into a discussion. Okay.